Sacred began in October of 2009. It was initially just myself, and quickly thereafter it grew, and currently have 3 artists, myself, Ben Delano, and Micah Gunnarsson. I've been tattooing for just over 6 years now, although my first introduction to tattooing was a lot earlier than that. When I was about 17, I was working at a skateboard and snowboard shop in town that was connected to a tattoo shop, and the gentleman who tattooed there had a lot of work coming in, and I was never too busy with the skateboard and snowboard end of things, so I spent a lot of time drawing with him. It was kind of an early introduction to the business, and it wasn't until years later out of college that I rediscovered tattooing. I was doing graphic design work out of college for a couple of years, and never really as into it as I wish I was. When I discovered tattooing, I immediately knew what the difference was. I knew that's what I was meant to do. My earliest memory of a tattoo was on my grandfather. He was in the Korean War, and he has what at the time I thought was some kind of rifle with a bayonet on it because of the point. But I just found out within the last couple of years that it was a dagger, and it's supposed to be going in and out of his skin, and the blood drop I thought was the part of the bayonet. But either way, I can remember being a kid and just thinking it was the coolest. Since I was 5, it was never a question, what my profession was going to be. My parents knew, and even I knew, that I would be an artist. I never knew it would materialize as a tattoo career per se, but I knew that it was going to be art that drove my life. I went to art school, and I graduated with my degree in illustration, which obviously isn't necessary for tattooing, and I get asked that often by young people, and sure, it's not necessary, but it definitely made me who I am today. I've met plenty of amazing artists who have even taken a shot at tattooing and realized quickly that it wasn't for them, and it's a very specific medium, and it takes a very specific kind of individual to be able to work with that kind of pressure, that kind of client, to have that confidence to do something that permanent. Yeah, I get asked periodically where the name Sacred comes from, and the short answer is that I'm Christian, but we also think highly enough of your tattoo. This is something that we take very seriously, and it's in essence sacred. I'd like to think that the experience here is different, plain and simple. From the way they're greeted to their conversation with their artist, to the experience, the full experience they receive throughout the tattoo, not just the final product. We try to meet both ends of that spectrum with an amazing experience from beginning to end, as well as an amazing product. I just enjoy so much of the process of being able to interact with people. I love people. I love working with the public, as well as being able to be creative day in and day out as my career. When you get to do both of those things, it barely feels like work. We're real fortunate in this community to have the clients that we do. Marquette is such a unique area in the fact that we're so diverse and have so many great thinking people and artistic minds, but at the same time are secluded enough to not be influenced in a lot of negative ways. Sometimes it can be, being that small can be challenging, or you feel disconnected, but in other ways we've created such a specific market with the way we tattoo and what this community expects in a tattoo, and we've almost, as an art community, not just here, really raised the standard of what's expected, and that's something that's hard to do in a bigger area. I've really been fortunate enough to assemble a team of guys here that I'm proud to call coworkers it's really easy to take for granted working with people that you love.
I knew Dan from living in the same town. Dan's a bit of a hometown hero. I think everybody here has at least heard his name. And I ended up getting tattooed by him when I was still in school, and he had just started out. One of my best friends in high school was a tattooer. Both of his parents were tattooers, and he and I spent a lot of time together. I'd always drawn and been artsy, but it wasn't until I started spending time with him that it really became something that was a compulsion that I knew was going to be how I would make my living someday. I didn't know that it would be tattooing, but I knew I was going to be an artist. I started tattooing when I was offered an apprenticeship, completely out of the blue from Dan. Didn't seek it out. Was never expecting to be a tattooer. Just happened. I was back because I got really hurt when I was skiing. I went out, I was working as a graphic designer for this small microbrew ski company in Colorado. And I was on their kind of like amateur ski team, and I got really hurt. I blew out my ACL, MCL, meniscus in my right knee and my frontal labral something in my right shoulder, which led me back here. Knew Dan enough to say hello when I was back, and it just happened to be exactly the right time for him to offer me an apprenticeship. Started the next day. When you're growing up, you hear your parents and teachers say that you should love what you do. And you hear that, and it makes sense, but it doesn't have any weight to it. And when I come into the shop every day, it doesn't feel like something that I have to wake up and have to do. It feels like something that, like, it's a privilege. I just stumbled into it. It's hard to not take it for granted when even not knowing any different. This is my first professional career, and I don't see myself doing anything else. Well, I think what makes the tattoos that we do as good as they are is because we all genuinely want to be here. All three of us want to be the best artist, tattooer that we can possibly be, and that's what we try to do every day.
I got into tattooing at an early age. It's something I've always wanted to do. I think it began with the type of music I was listening to. I was listening to a lot of punk rock, and I was really into skateboarding at the time, and all the skateboarders and bands I was listening to all had tattoos. So it really just caught my eye from an early age. I also remember as a kid, my grandpa has this one forearm tattoo. And I always used to stare at it, but I was always kind of too afraid to ask him what it was. He's had it for over 60 years. Coming to find out when I actually built up the courage to ask him what it was a skull with blood going through it. The blood's pretty much all gone now. But I actually have the exact same tattoo he has. I got it recently. So when I was a senior in high school, I just turned 18. I convinced my parents to let me get a tattoo. The legal age in Wisconsin is 18, unlike Michigan. So I got my first tattoo. It was Jesus carrying the cross on my upper arm. From the second I walked into the doors of the tattoo shop, I knew that's exactly where I wanted to be. I hit it off with the guys right away. Every day after that, I kind of poked around the shop and convinced them to let me kind of hang out and learn it a bit. I was going to apprentice there, and things just didn't really work out. So I ended up going to school for graphic design and illustration for a few years in Madison. About halfway through, I knew it just wasn't for me, and my love was for tattooing still. Through a friend, I knew another tattooer that owned a few shops. I got a hold of him, and he was opening up a new shop in Madison and needed somebody to run it, so it kind of all worked out perfectly. He agreed to teach me how to tattoo if I ran the shop for him. So I worked there for a couple months and decided we wanted to move back to Wisconsin. So he allowed me to move back into one of his shops. He owned several. That's kind of where I first learned to start tattooing. I'm at a place called Big Guns in Appleton, Wisconsin. So after being at Big Guns for a little while, I kept in contact from the first shop I worked at, Outrageous, when I was in high school. That's where I first met Dan. We kind of just hit it off as well, and we kind of kept in contact ever since. I was still kind of talking to him, and one of his employees had just left. And he was really doing something that I liked up here. And I felt that to progress my career, I needed to move up here and take it to the next level. The reason I really wanted to work for Dan, I just really liked his style of tattooing. By his drawings, he can just really draw. I think a big reason why people would come here is how we are as professionals, from the environment to the time that we spend on their drawings, to the one-on-one that we spend with each client to get them a quality product. I enjoy most working with Dan and Ben as well. Just always learning something new every day. I come into work and leave with something I didn't know, and that's why I like working here probably the most, like I said, along with the atmosphere and all the clients that we get.